All right, folks, say it with me. Media Days is officially over. And now, football's in the air. I can smell it with my nose. I can feel it in my bones. And if you can't, you either need some new bones or a new nose because it is right around the corner. Now, I could dive in and give you 1,000 different takeaways from Media Days and say, Avery Johnson won the Heisman. The Cats will go to the college football playoff. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. I try not to deal all the time in hypotheticals. I do in every video. That said, I don't try to. Today's video is going to be an interesting one because it's kind of a little bit of that, and it's also a little bit of facts. At Big 12 Media Days, one player was consistently brought up more than anybody else. And when I say that, I don't mean of the 5 guys that were there. I don't mean Avery, I don't mean VJ Payne, I don't mean any of the guys that are there. I mean a guy that every single one of them, or every single one of the coaching staff, or anyone on the media side, someone that consistently found their name into conversations was a member of the wide receiver room. And folks, today we're talking about Geron Tibs, the transfer from Purdue, a wide receiver that I'm excited about, and I say that with a grain of salt because it is a wide receiver at Kansas State, and you understand what hype has done to us in the past. But let me tell you a little bit about what everybody said about Tibs. QB1 himself, Avery Johnson, had an awesome quote about Geron Tibs I've pulled up over here. This is what he had to say at Media Days. He's going to be a dude for us, and I will talk about the definition of what a dude means in a second, but he's just a big physical receiver who is well put together. He's smart, a good route runner, strong hands, great at catching in traffic, and he does the things you can't teach. That's not just fluff, that's not just BS, that's what Avery is seeing day to day in practice. Now, I say that I'm going to define the word dude because we've heard that. On the basketball side of things, the we got dudes thing was blown way out of proportion. People say you're going to be a dude for us. It doesn't mean he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver immediately, but it also doesn't not mean that. The thing that I love about that definition is he's going to be a guy that impacts winning every single day on and off the field. That's a huge deal for Jaron Tibbs. Avery wasn't the only one that brought him up. Obviously, a couple weeks ago when they did the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator press conferences, Matt Wells raved about Tibbs. Chris Kleiman's talked about him as a big, physical, smart receiver who does the right things. But every single one when asked the question of, what is one play from spring ball that stood out to you? I think the 3 Mall guys did a great job asking this question. It's one that really always seems to get a good answer, or different answers to say the least. Usually you expect some variation because you're asking a guy like VJ Payne, who's the leader of the defense, in the secondary at least. You're asking Taylor Portier, who's an O-lineman. You're asking Avery, who's a quarterback. When you say, what's the best play made of spring ball, and you look at it across the board. VJ could say, let's say when Gunnar Maldonado did XYZ thing, when Quay Moss did this thing. Or, Taylor Portier can say, watching George Fitzpatrick ball out and pancake somebody. Like, you can say things like that, but everybody unanimously seemed to mention this one play that was posted on Instagram of Geron Tibs going up over the top and mossing. I think it was a Marion Fortenberry. I could be wrong about that. But he went up and got it. And Avery also mentioned another play where, that's a great way to say it, went up and mossed somebody on an end zone fade, just went straight up over the back, snatched it out of his hands. There's a lot of those moments that are being brought up by everybody across the board with Tibs. Now, it's important to note, when Kansas State hits the portal for receivers, we've seen guys like Keegan Johnson, who's a 4-star from Iowa, and everybody, every single offseason would say, hey, this is the Keegan Johnson season. This guy's going to be great. He's going to prove the doubters wrong. And he pretty much proved the doubters right every single season. Sounded like a great dude, sounded like a great leader, just didn't impact winning as much as he should have. Trey Spivey was one that everybody raved about, and then he gets out there and it seems like he doesn't know what he's doing. Consistently, at least. Obviously, Trey Spivey not with the Cats anymore. There were departures that needed to be addressed. Jace Brown, your best receiver, returns, and J.B. Bradley, so Jaron Bradley, is a guy that everybody looked at and said, this is going to be your wide receiver too. At one point, a preseason All Big 12 first-team type player, 6'5", 230, a big physical receiver that can do whatever you want. K-State fans have known very well what J.B. Bradley can do. But Tibbs has been the guy that's gotten the tip of the cap from everybody. That's the really interesting thing to me. And obviously, he's coming from a school that absolutely sucks at football. I say that lightly because both my brothers go there, but they are objectively the worst Power 5 program, or Power 4 program in college football right now. Maybe that changes, maybe it doesn't. So when you add a receiver from an offense that is absolutely garbage, everybody's having the flashback of Dante Cephas coming from Penn State. You're saying that offense sucked passing last year. Why are we getting this kid? Tibbs' stats last season left a little bit to be desired, but he was the most reliable of that pass-catching group. Last year at Purdue, he led the team with 25 catches for 305 yards and 2 scores. Now, it's not flashy, but for a struggling offense, like I said, you're the most reliable pass catcher out there. That's a big deal. When you watch the highlights, you can project him into Kansas State's offense being a difference maker. The best part of it, he didn't just fall in our lap. It wasn't just like, oh, it's either Kansas State or it's UTEP, or Kansas State or Oklahoma State. Like, you're not just to disrespect Oklahoma State like that. That's not the way I meant that to sound. But it wasn't just it's 50-50 if he ends up at Kansas State or a G5 school. He chose the Cats over USC with Lincoln Riley, Rutgers, Georgia Tech, Minnesota. Many, many more teams were interested in the kid because they saw the production that was there for Jaron Bradley. If I said Bradley there and I meant Tibbs, your boy meant Tibbs, so I apologize about that if I butchered that. Jaron Tibbs. There was a really interesting thing brought up from Chris Kleiman about Tibbs, about the receivers last year. Super quick break. If you're watching this video and you're not subscribed, 63% of the people watching this video right now are currently not subscribed to the YouTube channel, and feel free absolutely to ignore this and skip this, whatever the case is. But those of you that are watching right now and are unsubscribed, be sure and consider hitting that subscribe button if you love Kansas State, if you appreciate the channel. It's a great way to support me as I continue to grow on this journey, and it's also incredible to bring more K-State fans in like yourself on a consistent basis to see more of my K-State content. Once again, if you're in that 63% or if you're in the alternative in the 37%, I love and appreciate you. Back to the Cats. And it's tough to frame these conversations when you're asking somebody to basically say, hey, without airing out last year's receivers, without saying that Keegan Johnson stunk and Trace Bobby was XYZ thing, how do you go about that conversation? Everyone figured out that question, so shout out to the media guys that were there. I didn't get to make it this year, but it was basically, without airing out your receivers, is this the best unit you've been a part of? And we can rave about the tight ends. Everybody knows about the tight end. There is not one guy in that room that I wouldn't want out there on the field for just about any offense in the Big 12. Like, there's starters at every single position, 3 and 4 deep. And then you add a 5-star like Lincoln Curran there, who'll probably get his own spin-off video here in a couple days, but it feels great to see on the offense. The receivers last season, you had Jace Brown. Jace Brown was a factor. You had DJ Giddens. And Chris Kleiman talked about the difference between a Matt Wells offense and a Connor Riley offense, and basically said, okay, Connor Riley knew he had DJ Giddens. DJ's a workhorse. Like, you're going to give DJ the ball 25 times. You're going to let him go to work, and you saw what that can do. You see what happens against Colorado. You see what happens against Cincinnati. You see when DJ takes over games. Oklahoma State's a good example. Actually, that was a pretty decent pass-run balance in that game, but Connor Riley knew he had DJ Giddens, so he's going to give DJ Giddens the ball. Matt Wells knows he has everybody on this offense that's a capable playmaker. It's not okay, we have to look for Jace here. If he's not open, Avery scramble or hit your check down. Like, you're not going to be able to double up on Jace Brown and then not worry about anybody else on the field. You're not going to be able to shadow a tight end and say, well, if you beat us in one-on-one coverage, that's your prerogative, you do you. Everybody on this team is a difference maker. And not just to say that DJ Giddens was like, he wasn't hurting the offense at all. DJ's a 1,000-yard, 1,500-yard back, NFL player. That's not going to surprise anybody. But when you see something like that where you say, okay, if we stop DJ Giddens and we stop Jace Brown both, we can win this football game. There isn't a recipe for Kansas State anymore to beat Kansas State, because you're going to have guys like Tibbs get open. You're going to have guys like Bradley who can toss up in like a safety net situation of a one-on-one situation. That's going to be a big deal. And I know that a lot of people are going to look at this video and say, well, Joe, I don't really want to jump in the receiver hype again. I don't want to do another Keegan Johnson thing. I don't want to do another this thing, that thing. I feel really, really good about Tibbs. I've been wrong. I'm just going to say that. You know that. I feel really good about Tibbs. Not just all this stuff, not just, what you've heard from quotes from the coaching staff. From the sources inside the building that I have spoken to, there's a lot of people that have been really, really impressed with Tibbs' game. And that's not just to say, like, oh, he could be a 400-yard receiver. He could be a legit wide receiver one, even though you have Jace Brown, who just had 800 yards and multiple scores last season, like as a dynamic player in the Big 12. This could absolutely be a talented player that's going to really affect winning, and I'm pumped to see that. When Avery Johnson doesn't have to be the superhero. I mean, it's the Will Howard quote that pissed everybody off. I get that a while back when he said, I feel like I don't have to be Superman to win games here. Obviously, you have 4 5-star receivers around you at Ohio State, but at Kansas State, Avery last season, based on the offense, like, if you shut down DJ Giddens, there's a 50-50 shot Avery's going to have to do it himself. Because Dylan wasn't getting many touches. Jace Brown couldn't consistently get open because they'll double him on the back end or they'll shadow his side. Avery's going to have to be the difference maker. This season, I think Avery's going to be 5 or 6 deep as to when he has to be the difference maker, because the guys around him are going to make his job easier, and that starts with Tibbs. So I'll sign it all up here and say this. Anytime you hear about a guy consistently, anytime, and I'll take you back to 2022, everybody talked about who's an impact freshman or who's a guy that will be a household name one day, the same question. Everybody said Austin Romaine. Every single player there mentioned him. Will Howard raved about him for 4.5 minutes about Austin Romaine. Look where we're at now. Anytime every single person, your coaching staff, your quarterback, your fellow playmakers, guys around the field mention a specific guy, it's probably a safer bet to put the money on that guy. That's what I'll say for that. But that's going to be for today's video. Could Geron Tibs be the X factor for Kansas State? He absolutely could. And I'm fired up to see some good things happening in the receiver core. But that's pretty much going to do it for today's video. I needed some extra sleep today, coming off media days, back-to-back big days. That's why this video's out at 3 instead of 8:30. We'll be back in your regular scheduled program as the week goes on. But that'll pretty much do it for today, and I will talk to you guys soon. Go Cats!